It's 2 a.m., and I'm alone in the cramped office my wife and I share, clutching her iPhone, the one she guards like a treasure, never letting it slip from her sight unless she's asleep. Tonight, I waited for that rare moment, her soft breathing steady down the hall, and now here I am, hands trembling as I connect it to my laptop, the faint hum of the spyware I installed buzzing through my headphones. I shouldn't be doing this, snooping, doubting the woman I've called mine for 19 years. But then her voice crackles through low and intimate, whispering to someone named Mark, "I love you, but I still need David." The words hit like a freight train, splintering everything I thought I knew. A few weeks ago, I was just a husband annoyed by her jumpy phone habits. Now I'm a man staring into an abyss, her secrets spilling out through this tiny screen while I sit in the dark, wondering who the hell I've been sleeping next to. The restaurant chatter fades in the background of her call, her laugh, so familiar yet so foreign, mixing with his smooth assurances, and I'm left gripping the edge of my desk, breathless, humiliated, and hungry to know more. Hey everyone, I'm David Sanner, 45 years old, a lawyer, father of two daughters, and let me tell you, I never thought I'd be the guy sitting up at 2 a.m., cracking into my wife's phone like some paranoid detective. But here's the thing, it didn't start with that night, it started weeks ago, with a moment so small I almost let it slide. I walked into our kitchen one evening, the smell of roasted chicken still lingering from dinner, and Doris, my wife, was on the phone, her voice tight and clipped. The second my boots hit the tile, she flinched, muttered a quick, "Gotta go," and hung up, shoving the phone into her pocket like it was evidence. She smiled, too fast, too bright, and said it was just her mom, but I've been a lawyer long enough to spot a lie. Her eyes darted away, and that flicker of unease stuck with me, a splinter I couldn't pull out. A few days later, I asked to borrow her phone to order pizza. Mine was dead, an easy excuse, and she hesitated, her fingers tightening around it, before she handed it over with a casual, "Sure, here." I didn't expect much, but when I swiped through, the call history was empty, messages wiped clean. That wasn't normal. It was deliberate, a scrubbed slate screaming she had something to hide. Doris isn't tech savvy. Our daughters, Pat and Beth, had cracked her passcode the day she got that phone, giggling about how predictable mom was. But this was intentional erasure, and it gnawed at me. I see lies every day in my job, clients spinning tales, witnesses dodging truth, but in my own home, that's where it cut deeper. I've been married to Doris for 19 years, built a life in this creaky San Francisco house. Two girls, a mortgage, a rhythm I thought was solid. I didn't marry her for love at first, not the fairy tale kind. We met at a Sigma Chi party back in college. Me, a second-year law student supervising a freshman mixer. Her, a bold 17-year-old crashing in with her friends, high on something and planting a possessive kiss on me like she'd already decided I was hers. She wasn't the lanky kid I vaguely remembered from my mom's best friend's family photos anymore. She was electric, confident, impossible to ignore. I didn't chase her. She chased me, and somewhere between casual dates and her breaking it off only to reel me back in that summer, I fell. Not hard, not fast, but steady, because with Doris, things felt brighter, louder, alive. I'm not the romantic type, reserved, logical, always weighing the odds. But Doris filled the gaps I didn't know I had. She was there through law school, through the bar exam, through the twins' birth when I was still scrambling to make partner. She never asked for much, just held us together, PhD in hand, teaching Shakespeare, raising our girls while I fought courtroom battles. Sure, there were cracks, her late nights out, my long hours, but I chalked it up to life, not betrayal. Now that kitchen moment replayed in my head, her flinch a warning I'd ignored. What was she hiding? Why erase everything? My job taught me people lie for a reason, and as I sat there night after night, staring at her phone on the counter, I knew I had to find out, even if it tore me apart. It was past midnight when I decided to do it. Doris was asleep, her breathing slow and even, the house quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside our Mission District windows. I slipped into the office we shared, a cramped room stuffed with my law books and her Shakespeare anthologies, and locked the door behind me. Her iPhone sat on my desk, its sleek black case mocking me, her constant companion, the one thing she never let out of her sight. I'd waited for this, planned it, because if I was going to doubt her, I needed proof, not just gut feelings. My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop, a cheap USB cable dangling between us like a lifeline, or a noose. I'm a lawyer. I know how vulnerable tech is. Landlines were child's play to tap back in the day. Smartphones are worse, ripe for the picking if you know how. I didn't until I bought a quick read ebook on hacking iPhones, $9.99 well spent. Jailbreaking it was simple: strip the security, bypass the locks, and our daughters had already given me a head start by cracking her passcode years ago. 0815, her birthday. I'd laughed then, called her predictable. Now it felt like a betrayal she'd handed me the key to. The screen lit up, and I hesitated, my finger hovering over the app I'd installed earlier that week. Spyware, discreet, advanced, something I justified as a precaution. Was I really doing this? Was I paranoid, or was I finally seeing clearly? I hit start, and the software hummed to life, syncing her calls, texts, everything to my laptop. My chest tightened. 19 years with Doris flashed before me. Her bold kiss at that frat party, her fearless laugh as we stumbled into love, the twins' tiny hands in ours. She'd always been solid, the rock I leaned on, the mother who held us together when I was drowning in work. I didn't marry her for passion. I married her because she fit, because she made sense. But over time, I'd grown to love her, deeply, quietly. Now that love was a weight, pressing me to stop, to trust her, to walk away from this madness. But the kitchen flinch, the wiped phone, they wouldn't let me. The first pull was nothing. Hours of calls about dresses, books, mundane chatter with friends. I listened anyway, sifting through the noise, waiting for the crack. Days passed and I almost gave up, almost uninstalled it, ready to call myself a fool. Then at 2 a.m., alone in that office, the live feed kicked in. A call, her voice soft, intimate. "Mark, I miss you." My stomach dropped, the room tilting as I fumbled with my headphones, her words spilling out. "I love you, but I still need David." Mark's voice followed, smooth, younger. "He's old, Doris. You deserve more." I sat there frozen, the screen's glow burning my eyes, her confession unraveling everything. One wrong move had led me here, one secret uncovered, and now I couldn't unhear it, couldn't unknow the truth that was about to shatter 19 years of my life. Let me rewind for you. 19 years with Doris is a story I thought I'd tell with pride, but now it's a map I'm retracing, looking for where it all went wrong. We met at a Sigma chai party in college, a sweaty basement packed with freshmen and cheap beer. I was 24, a second-year law student, there to supervise the mixer, disconnected from campus life, focused on grades and the bar exam ahead. Doris walked in, 17, bold as hell, her dark hair wild, her laugh cutting through the noise. I recognized her, daughter of my mom's best friend Margaret, but she wasn't the awkward kid I'd last seen years ago. She was high, maybe drunk, and when she spotted me, she squealed, "David!" and threw her arms around me, planting a kiss that claimed me in front of everyone. I stuck around, made sure she got home safe, and somehow she decided we were a thing. It wasn't serious, not at first. She was a freshman, I was nearly done with law school, but she had this energy, electric, chaotic, that pulled me in. She broke it off once, said she wanted to see other people, and I played it cool, but when summer hit and I took a legal gig in our college town, she was there taking classes, stopping me in the dorm hall with, "We need to talk." She regretted it, wanted me back, and I said yes, cautious, unsure. Then on her 18th birthday, August 15th, she showed up at the student union after volunteering, jeans and a tee, an overnight bag slung over her shoulder. "I want you to be my first," she said, no hesitation. And I couldn't say no, not to her fearlessness, her certainty. That night with candles and cheap champagne, Changed everything. She was uninhibited, alive, and I was hooked. We built something. Casual turned real. Love crept in slow. I graduated, passed the bar, and she got pregnant. Twins, Pat and Beth, born just as I landed my first firm job. Money was tight, our apartment a shoebox, but Doris never faltered. Finished her degree, got her PhD, taught Shakespeare while I climbed the legal ladder. She was the lioness, fierce, steady, holding us together when I was too buried in work to notice the strain. I wasn't ambitious before her. She pushed me, made me relentless. But looking back, there were signs. Her late nights with friends, her phone always buzzing, my notes left unanswered. I'd plan dinners, she'd cancel. I'd reach for her, she'd turn away with a tired, "Later, David." I told myself it was normal. Marriages fade, passion dims. But I never stopped loving her, never saw her as less than my wife. Now sitting here with her phone's secrets spilling out, I see it differently. She'd shaped me, molded me into her extension, her possession, and I'd let her, because belonging to Doris felt right. But that energy I loved, it wasn't just for me anymore. The kitchen flinch, the wiped calls, they weren't glitches. They were cracks in a foundation I'd thought was stone. 19 years, 2 daughters, a life I'd fought for, and she was whispering, "I love you," to someone else. How long had I been blind? How long had she been slipping away, leaving me to hold up a marriage she'd already half abandoned? For weeks I'd been listening, sifting through hours of Doris's calls, her voice droning on about dresses, books, her students' papers. It was tedious, pointless, and I'd nearly called it quits, ready to uninstall the spyware and bury my suspicions. Then my phone buzzed during a meeting. 3 notifications, sharp and insistent, popping up on my screen through the app I'd rigged. Doris and I rarely texted, neither of us cared for it, so I glanced down, casual at first until the words hit me like a slap. "Mark, I miss you so much," followed by, "When and where?" And his reply, "Cooper's at 12:30, love you." My breath caught, the conference room fading as my heart slammed against my ribs. Cooper's, a quiet spot just outside the city, the kind you pick when you don't want eyes on you. It was past noon. I wouldn't make it. But I had the spyware. I could listen. I excused myself, grabbed my iPad, and bolted to my car, the San Francisco skyline blurring past as I sped toward nowhere, just needing to hear. The feed crackled. Street noise first, Doris driving, then the muffled clink of a restaurant. A hostess chirped, "Good afternoon, can I help you?" A man's voice, curt, smooth. "I'm meeting someone." A pause, then, "Oh, here he is." And the shuffle of bodies. A hug, maybe more. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white as Doris sat down, her voice soft. Familiar, but not for me. Small talk at first, weather, traffic. Then Mark turned it on, his tone dripping with charm. "Your hair looks amazing today. That dress, God, Doris, you're stunning." She laughed, shy but pleased, and I pictured her blushing, the way she used to for me. The tone shifted. He said my name, casual, cutting. "Your husband, that guy's a joke. Old, stiff, boring. He doesn't deserve you." My stomach twisted, but Doris didn't defend me, not outright. "David and I, we're meant to grow old together," she said, her voice wavering, and I clung to that, a lifeline in the storm. But Mark pressed, "He already is old. You're still young, Doris. Why waste that?" Silence stretched, then she murmured, "If I can't leave him, we'll have to be careful." My chest caved. She wasn't saying no. "I've never been with anyone but David," she admitted softer. "I love him. But you make me feel different, like I need you to feel whole." He purred back, "You just need me to show you. It's not love with him. It's obligation." She exhaled, sharp. "I need time," and he snapped, "I've been waiting." I pulled into a random lot, engine idling, their voices low, intimate, her promising to figure things out, him calling her mine. She said, "I still love Dave," but it sounded hollow, a footnote to her confession. "You make me feel alive." I tore off the headphones. the car silent except for my ragged breathing. Mark wasn't just a fling, he was a threat, younger, bolder, peeling her away while I sat here, invisible, betrayed by the woman who'd sworn I was her forever. 19 years and she'd found someone to replace me, someone who saw me as a relic she was too good for. I couldn't stop myself. I drove closer to Cooper's, parking far enough to stay unseen, the spyware feeding me every word of Doris and Mark's lunch. The San Francisco fog clung to my windshield, a gray shroud matching the weight in my chest as their voices crackled through my iPad. Street noise faded, replaced by the clatter of plates, the hum of a quiet restaurant meant for secrets. Mark's voice hit first, smooth, confident, younger than I'd braced for. "You look incredible, Doris. That dress, your hair. Damn, you're too good for him." Her laugh, soft, flattered, stabbed me, a sound I'd once owned. "Thanks," she murmured, shy but soaking it in, and I pictured her smoothing her skirt, the way she did when she felt seen. Small talk drifted, traffic, her classes. Then he turned it sharp, my name a blade in his mouth. "Your husband's a joke, Doris. Old, stiff, boring. He doesn't deserve you." I waited, breath held for her to push back, to say he was wrong. She didn't. "David and I were meant to grow old together," she said, but it wobbled uncertain, and Mark pounced. "He already is old. You're still young. Why waste that on him?" Silence stretched, heavy, and I gripped the steering wheel, willing her to stop him. Instead, she whispered, "If I can't leave him, we'll have to be careful." And my world tilted. "I've never been with anyone but David," she added, voice breaking. "I love him. But you make me feel different, like I need you to feel whole." He leaned in. I could hear it, murmuring, "It's not love with him. It's obligation. I'll show you what you've been missing." Her exhale was sharp, torn. "I just need time, for everyone's sake." Mark's impatience cut through. "I've been waiting. Don't make me wait forever." She softened, promising, "I'll figure it out," and then quieter. "I still love Dave, but you make me feel alive." I tore the earbuds out, their intimacy suffocating me. Her voice, once mine, now his, weaving a future that didn't include me. My hands shook, the fog pressing against the glass as I replayed it. She loved me, but she needed him. He called me a relic, old, useless, and she didn't fight it, just bent under his charm, her hesitation a knife twisting deeper. I'd built my life around her, 19 years, 2 daughters, a home, and she was rewriting it with a stranger who saw me as nothing. The car felt smaller, the air stale, as their words looped in my head. She wasn't leaving, not yet, but she was choosing, testing a life where I was the fallback, the obligation. Mark's voice, young, hungry, promised her youth I couldn't give, and she was drinking it in, her "I love Dave," a hollow echo against "I need you." I stared at her car in my mind's eye, parked outside Cooper's, and saw her, elegant, alive, stepping into his arms while I sat here, a ghost in my own story. The betrayal wasn't just the words, it was her silence when he trashed me, her willingness to let him rewrite us. I wasn't enough anymore, and that truth burned hotter than any anger. Days later, the spyware caught something worse. Not Mark, but Doris's mother, Margaret, on a call I wasn't meant to hear. I was in my office, the house quiet, when her voice came through, sharp and conspiratorial. "You've given David everything, Doris. What's he given you? You've lost your leverage now that the kids are grown." My jaw tightened. Margaret, the polished professor who'd welcomed me like royalty 19 years ago, was plotting. Doris sighed. "I'm married. I chose David." But Margaret pushed, "You peak later, darling. Men fade, we grow. If he loves you, he'll understand variety." I froze, the room spinning as Doris murmured, "I don't know. David's sentimental. What if he won't accept it?" Margaret's reply was cold. "He'll adjust, like your father did. Agnes made sure he married you. Let me talk to her. Agnes, my mother, knew. The woman who'd raised me, worked night shifts as a nurse to keep us afloat, had pushed me into this? I'd always sensed pressure. Her "don't screw this up, Davy." But this was a gut punch. They saw me as a pawn, a husband to guide into accepting Doris's needs. Margaret's voice hardened. "You've been an excellent wife. Raised smart girls, out-earn him." "He owes you this." Doris wavered. "But cheating?" "Only if he doesn't agree," Margaret cut in. And I heard my mother's voice next, firm. "David will come around. We'll ease him into it." Ease me? Into my wife's affair? My hands clenched, the betrayal sinking deeper. Not just Doris, but our mothers, rewriting my marriage like it was their script. I sat there, the office walls closing in, replaying 19 years. Doris's parents, Larry, the bank vice president, and Margaret, had treated me like a prize back then, a law student with promise. My mom, Agnes, tall and blonde, had bonded with Margaret in high school, their friendship sealing our families together. They'd all assumed Doris and I were inevitable. My dad even said, "She's the one, son," and I'd bought it, thought it was fate. But now, they weren't protecting me. They were protecting her freedom, her right to more after years of sacrifice. I'd sacrificed too. 60-hour weeks, a conscience bent for money. But to them, I was the weak link, the sentimental fool who'd bend if they pushed hard enough. The call ended, but the echo lingered. My own family conspiring to keep me in line, to make me the husband who'd nod and smile while Doris chased her thrill. They didn't see love. They saw a transaction, a balance sheet where Doris had earned her affair, and I'd earned nothing but compliance. My chest ached, not just from her words, but from the realization. The people I'd trusted most had already decided I was disposable. A man to manage, not respect. 19 years, and I was a prop in their play. Loved maybe, but never valued. You'd think the sting of Doris's lunch with Mark would be the worst of it. But no, the real gut punch came a few days later when my daughter's voices crackled through the spyware. Casual and cutting, like they were discussing weekend plans instead of dismantling my life. I was parked outside the firm, the San Francisco skyline jagged against a gray sky, my car a temporary bunker as I listened. Beth's voice kicked it off, bright and laughing. "Hey, Mom, we're getting in late Tuesday for Thanksgiving. Got plans with some football guys after the game Sunday." Doris chuckled through the phone. "I'll let your dad know." Then tossed in, "Isn't Pat still with that swimmer, Rick?" Beth giggled. "She is, but he just deals with it. She's seeing other people, too." Doris sighed, a mix of amusement and disbelief. "Times have changed, huh? Men okay with their girlfriends dating around?" I could hear the clink of dishes. She was probably in the kitchen, prepping for the holiday. But her tone shifted when Pat jumped in. "Oh, Mom, don't be so old-fashioned. Speaking of, how's it going with Mark?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel, the leather creaking under my grip as I waited for Doris to shut it down. She didn't. "No, absolutely not," she said, firm but too late. "I'm married to your father." Beth laughed, sharp and dismissive. "Come on, Mom, Dad's an old man. You're still young. Don't let some outdated ideas hold you back from a little fun. He'll understand. He loves you. Who else would want him?" The words hit like a slap, my breath catching as Pat piled on. "We can talk to him for you. Remind him of everything you've done. He adores you, and honestly, it's unfair for you to be tied to just one man forever." Doris hesitated, her voice softer. "I don't know. He's sensitive. When he was younger, he could have strayed, but he never did. I don't think he'd see it your way." Beth pressed, relentless. "If it means that much to you, just tell him he'll always come first. He'll cave." That's what Pat told Rick, and he's fine with it. I tore the earbuds out, their laughter echoing in my skull as the car's silence swallowed me whole. My girls, Patricia and Elizabeth, the twins I'd cradled as babies, read Charlotte's Web too until my voice gave out, whose fevers I'd sat through with a cold cloth and a prayer, saw me as a relic, a pushover to negotiate a way for their mom's happiness. "Who else would want him?" Beth's voice looped, cruel and careless, and I stared at my reflection in the windshield, graying hair, tired lines etched around my eyes. A man they'd written off as too old, too sentimental to matter. I'd loved them fiercely, tucked them in, built my world around their giggles and hugs, and now they were laughing at me, brokering my marriage like it was a deal to close, convinced I'd bend because I had no spine, no options. 19 years flashed before me, those early nights when they'd climb into my lap, tiny hands clutching my shirt, asking if the ducklings in Make Way for Ducklings would make it across the road. I'd been their hero then, the dad who could fix anything, stop the rain with a smile. Now, I was old, a burden they'd convinced to step aside so Mom could live a little. Doris didn't shut it down hard enough. Her "he's sensitive" was a weak shield. Her hesitation an invitation for them to keep pushing. "He'll cave," Beth had said, and Pat's "he adores you" twisted the knife deeper. They didn't just dismiss me. They pitied me, saw me as a sad, loyal dog too dumb to leave the porch. My chest ached, the fog outside thickening as their voices replayed. My own blood siding with a stranger named Mark, leaving me to wonder how long they'd seen me as nothing but a shadow in their lives. The betrayal wasn't just their words. It was the ease of it, the way they laughed like it was a game. Not my life they were unraveling. I'd spent years pouring myself into them, 60-hour weeks to pay for their college, sleepless nights when they were sick. And they'd turned me into a punchline, a man too pathetic to fight back. Doris's murmur, "Mark isn't a replacement," rang hollow against their push. She was entertaining it, letting them rewrite me as the obstacle to her freedom. I sat there, engine idling, the city's hum a dull roar, and felt the weight of it. My daughters didn't just betray me, they erased me, convinced I'd roll over because I always had. But they were wrong. I wasn't that man anymore, and I'd make sure they felt it. After that call, I couldn't unsee myself through their eyes. Old, worn, a fixture they'd stopped noticing. I'd let time creep up, gray overtaking my hair, suits hanging loose from years behind a desk, a softness around my middle I'd ignored. Doris and the girls didn't see me anymore, but I saw me, and I hated it. The next morning, I drove to an upscale salon in San Francisco's financial district, $200 for a cut and color, the stylist toning down the grays, clipping my hair into something sharp and modern. I hit a boutique after, dropped $1,000 on tailored suits, crisp shirts, polished shoes that clicked with purpose on the hardwood. I'd been at the gym for a year, dropped 13 of the 18 pounds I'd gained over the decades, but now I pushed harder, sweat soaking my shirt as I ran miles on the treadmill, weights clanging as I rebuilt what they'd dismissed. Thanksgiving rolled around, and the girls arrived from college, Pat and Beth, all quick hugs and pecks on the cheek. Same as always, but distant, mechanical. I stood in the living room, new suit pressed, hair neat, waiting for a flicker. Some nod to the change, a, "Hey, Dad, you look good." Nothing. Doris breezed past, prepping the turkey, her eyes skimming over me like I was part of the furniture. The house filled. 21 people. Family crowding in for the parade, football blaring from the TV. And I moved through it like a ghost. In the kitchen, I caught their voices. My mom, Doris, Margaret, dissecting me over the clatter of pots. "He's been off lately," Doris said, casual. "Work stress, maybe," Margaret mused. "A midlife crisis. He's lost now the girls are gone." My mom agreed, "We need to steer him back to reality." They didn't see the man standing there. Just a problem to fix, a husband to manage. I'd changed. Hair, clothes, body, but it didn't register. To them, I was still the sentimental David, too loyal to notice the cracks, too old to matter. I'd spent years building this life. Partner at the firm, a house we'd paid off with blood and sweat, and they'd reduced me to a caricature, a man who'd nod at betrayal because he had no choice. The gym, the suits, they weren't for them. They were for me. A quiet rebellion against their pity, a refusal to be the slippers they'd worn out. I slipped into my office that night, the house buzzing below, and stared at my reflection in the window. Sharper, harder, a man they didn't recognize. But they didn't look. They saw the same old David, the one who'd cave because he adored them too much to fight. The realization hit hard. I wasn't invisible because I'd faded. I was invisible because they'd stopped caring to see. 19 years and I'd become a backdrop to their lives, a prop they'd nudge into place. My chest tightened. The chatter downstairs a dull hum as I traced the new lines of my jaw, the fit of my jacket. Proof I wasn't done, even if they thought I was. Changing myself wasn't enough to wake them up. It was a spark, a step towards something bigger. I wasn't just reinventing my look. I was rewriting my story, and they'd feel the ending whether they noticed me or not. That night, alone in the dark, I knew. I'd been playing their game too long, and it was time to flip the board. I'd been dirty for years. Eminent domain law isn't a clean game, and I'd played it well. Jimmy Landrew, my old law school buddy, fed me tips from his Senate gig. Land grabs planned before the public caught wind. 2 years back, I drained my savings, emptied my 401k, and bought 250 acres of scrubby pasture for $1,500 an acre. Worthless until a retailer needed a warehouse and a highway exit Jimmy knew was coming. I buried it under a Wyoming shell corp, no paper trail, and sold it later for $22,000 an acre. Millions stashed in accounts Doris never touched. I'd lied to her, blamed market dips, tough competition, and she didn't question it, just cut back, picked up extra classes, trusted me like always. That money was my ace, my quiet rebellion, and now it was my way out. The family kept pushing. My dad and father-in-law, Larry Sr., dragged me to a Giants game. Limo stocked with drinks, preaching over the roar of the crowd. "A younger lover will make Doris happier," Dad said, clapping my shoulder. "Real love means letting her have what she needs." Larry nodded. "It's modern, David. Don't be narrow-minded." I let them talk, sipping my beer, then shut it down as the game wound down. If I ever catch Doris with another man, our marriage is over. No exceptions. They argued, called me immature, stuck in the past. But I didn't budge, my voice cold and final. They went silent, exchanging looks, but I saw the wheels turning. They weren't done. New Year's Eve was their next move. I'd overheard it through the spyware, a plan to get me drunk at Larry Jr.'s party, stage photos with Elaine, Samuel's timid wife, to blackmail me into accepting Mark. Anne was supposed to flirt, Elaine to seal the deal, pictures to prove I'd cheated, forcing my hand. I'd known it was coming. Anne's husky, "You're not so bad at Thanksgiving," Elaine's nervous glances, and I was ready. That money, millions from years of land deals, was my leverage, a lifeboat they couldn't sink. I'd let them think I was broke, let Doris believe we were scraping by while I bought ahead of the state, flipped properties, built a fortune under their noses. They wanted me compliant, a husband who'd nod at betrayal. I'd leave them with nothing but their schemes. I played along at the party, arrived late, reeking of whiskey from a stop at Irish Fog with old friends, letting them think I was already gone. Anne pulled me to the dance floor, pressing close, her laugh too loud, while Elaine hovered, nervous but in on it. The drinks flowed, my glass always full, but I sipped soda, kept my head clear. By midnight, they decided I was ripe. Anne and Elaine each took a hand, giggling as they led me upstairs, my steps deliberate, not stumbling. They didn't see the man with millions waiting, the one who'd turned their game against them. I saw their end, and it was mine to write. New Year's Eve at Larry Jr.'s house was their last stand. The air thick with whiskey and smoke as I walked in, the spyware's echo of Doris's earlier call still ringing. "Mark thinks it's time to rent a room." She'd sighed. "I need David. He's my first, my true love." But her resolve was paper thin, crumbling under his push. I'd prepped at Irish Fog, met old friends, kept my head clear, then arrived at the party, letting them smell the liquor on me, think I was already lost. Anne dragged me to the dance floor, her husky voice purring, pressing close, part of the plan to soften me up. Elaine lingered nearby, timid but complicit, her hands fidgeting as the night wore on. The drinks came fast, my glass refilled with bourbon I barely touched, swapping it for soda when they weren't looking. while they watched, waiting for me to slur, to sway. By midnight, they pounced. Anne and Elaine each grabbed a hand, giggling as they pulled me upstairs, the crowd's roar fading behind us. "He's ready," Anne muttered, shoving me into a guest room, the bed sagging under my weight as I sat, playing along. "Undress him while I get ready," she snapped at Elaine, slipping out of her dress, her silhouette sharp against the dim light. Elaine hesitated, fingers trembling against my shirt, murmuring, "He's actually not that out of shape." I let her fumble, then sat up, voice steady. "I don't think I want you to do that, unless Anne's willing to sleep with this old, not-so-fat man." Elaine recoiled, gasping, "Crap, crap, crap," as Anne froze, cursing under her breath. I stood, buttoning my shirt, smoothing my jacket. "My sister warned you. Does anyone in this family listen?" They scrambled out, panic in their steps, and I called after them, "Send up the woman who calls herself my wife." Doris appeared minutes later, shuffling into the doorway, eyes red, nose running, pathetic, caught, a far cry from the lioness I'd married. She sniffled. "You wanted to see me?" I nodded. "Come in, sit down." She perched on the bed, blotchy and desperate, not sorry, just sorry she'd been found out. "What do you regret, Doris?" I asked, voice low. "Wanting Mark or his bed last Wednesday?" She gasped, panic flashing. "No, David, please, I love you. It didn't mean anything. You have to believe me. I know you'll forgive me." She thought my calm was weakness, her hands clutching at me like she could pull me back. "No, Doris, I don't," I said, and her face twisted, hope flickering, then dying. "I forgive you," I continued, "but there's a problem. I don't love you. Never have, never will." She sucked in a breath. "That's not true. You're just angry." I laughed, low and quiet. "Do I seem angry?" She blinked, rapid, trying to rewrite the moment, but I pressed on. 19 years in this marriage. It wasn't bad. A gilded cage, maybe. But now the door's open, and I'm walking out, gratefully. She grabbed my arm. "You're not leaving me over this." I turned, voice light. "Oh, I am. You wanted an open marriage. I'm giving you the most open one possible. No husband." Her grip tightened. "What'll you tell our daughters?" I paused. "Nothing. Goodbye's all I have for them. And you." She inhaled, sharp. "You don't mean that." I shrugged. "I'd like to believe they aren't mine, but with my mother's blood in them, I've got no doubt." It wasn't true. My real girls, the ones who'd sat on my lap, eyes wide for make way for ducklings, were still mine, frozen in time. But these women weren't those girls anymore. I walked out, her sobs fading as my mother blocked the door downstairs, Dad beside her. "Where do you think you're going?" she demanded. I smiled. "Good question. No answer yet. Places I haven't seen in 20 years, I guess." Her expression twisted. "You're running because life didn't go your way?" "No," I said. "I'm leaving to find life. The one I missed." Dad sighed. "Think about this, son. Doris has been good to you. We all know you need her." I met his eyes. "Sorry, Dad. I already left. You just never noticed." I kissed Mom's cheek, stepped past them, and kept going. Free, alone, but not lonely for long. I had the money, the will, and a world waiting. If the woman you love, or thought you loved, turns you into a ghost in your own life, don't stand there taking it. Walk away. Reclaim yourself, like I did with Doris. You're not their fallback, their doormat, or their fool. Cut the ties and build something they can't touch. I spent 19 years bending, believing love meant compromise. But when Doris whispered, "I love you" to Mark while plotting to keep me in line, I saw the truth. Love shouldn't cost your dignity. I left her with her schemes, her family's pity, and a house I'd paid for, walked out with millions they'll never find, and a freedom I'd forgotten I could claim. You've got that strength too. Use it, step out, and don't look back. Life's too short to be someone's shadow. And hey, if this hit you where it counts, stick around. Drop a like, share your own story in the comments, maybe even hit subscribe if you want more real talk like this. We're all navigating our messes. Let's figure it out together.